This video is kindly brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to create a beautiful online presence. Hi, my name's Janelle and welcome back to Rosery Apparel. In this video, I'm going to be sharing two different, not so typical tote bag DIYs. Tote bags are one of my favorite things to sew because not only are they quick and easy, they're also super practical and they also make great gifts. And out of all of the tote bags I've made in all of my previous videos, I realized I've pretty much given all of them away, and so I needed to make myself some new tote bags. But this time I wanted to make some that were a little bit different to normal, and yeah, I'm really happy with the two designs I came up with. So without further ado, let's get into it and let's make some tote bags. Let me start by showing you how to make this incredible checkered tote bag. For this project, you're going to need two contrasting fabrics. I'm using fabric recycled from two different tablecloths for my tote bag. And to make the checkered look, we're going to be sewing multiple 9x9cm or 3.5x3.5 inch squares together. I've made a template that you can find a link to download in the description of this video to make the cutting out easier for you. And I'm also going to be using my LDH rotary cutter and a ruler to cut out my squares, which just makes the whole process a lot quicker and easier as well. I start by cutting my fabric into rectangles that are the correct width, and then I use my template and ruler to cut the squares of fabric. You can obviously cut your squares of fabric with fabric scissors instead, but using a rotary cutter does cut the squares a little bit more accurately, which is important, as the more accurately you can cut your squares, the better they will line up when we start piecing them together. All up, you're going to need 42 squares of each colour. To make the tote bag, we're going to be making two larger rectangles out of the smaller squares. And so I decided to place my squares into the pattern by simply alternating the coloured squares just to double check I was happy with how it was looking, and ended up with a rectangle that was 6 squares wide and 7 squares long. We're going to start by sewing the squares into strips. So I piled up the squares that made up the width of the rectangle, and we'll start by sewing them all together. Start by placing two of the squares together with right sides together and sew along one of the edges. For this project, we're going to be using a 1cm or 1/2 inch seam allowance throughout. Then continue stitching the squares from each pile together, alternating the colours to create the pattern. Once you've sewn all the piles into strips, you will have 7 strips that look like this. For some reason, I only have 6 strips shown here, but there should have been 7. Take each strip and press the seams towards the darker of the two fabrics. Next, with right sides together, place the strips onto one another, making sure the coloured squares are still alternating, and stitch them together along one of the sides like this. When placing the strips together, the seam allowance should sit opposite one another like this, which will help the layers to not be too bulky. Keep sewing the strips together until you've made a fully sized rectangle. Once stitched, press all the seam allowances towards one direction. And you should now have a beautifully checkered rectangle like this. If you've kept your seam allowance nice and consistent, your fabric squares should line up and meet each other at the points a little bit like this. Then repeat this whole process to create another checkered rectangle. Let's just take a quick moment now to talk about the sponsor of this video. This video has been very kindly sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to create a beautiful online presence and launch your passion project. Whether you'd like to start making and selling your own products, create a beautiful portfolio to showcase your work, write a blog, or simply create any website of any kind, you can do it all in one place with Squarespace. You can simply choose from one of their beautifully designed award-winning templates and then customize and change it up as much as you like to suit your brand and style. I've personally been using Squarespace to run the Rosery Apparel website since 2016, and I'm still just so blown away by just how easy it is to customize and make the website exactly what you want it to be. You can change everything from the overall layout of the website to all the fun things like the fonts and colors with just a few clicks. You don't have to have any knowledge or background in coding whatsoever. Something else I really love about Squarespace is just how in-depth their analytics are on the back end of the website, especially at the moment as we're starting a new financial year. I just love being able to check how my website did over the last year and see if there are any areas in which I can improve my website for the new year. They cover everything from where your customers are coming from, how many clicks you're getting on your website, what products are performing best, and all of that kind of interesting stuff that I just find fascinating and is really helpful and insightful to know when you run your own business. So if you'd like to create your very own website for yourself, then head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your beautiful new website, head to squarespace.com/roseryapparel for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Next, to make the straps for the tote bag, you're going to need to cut 2 long, skinny rectangles that measure approximately 10 centimeters or 4 inches by 80 centimeters or 31.5 inches. I've decided to cut my straps out of the same peachy coloured tablecloth. Then to make the straps, press the longer edges of the rectangles in by about 1 centimeter or half an inch. And then fold and press the rectangle in half lengthways. Stitch the folded edges in place. And then top stitch along the other edge as well. Next, using your checkered rectangles as a template, cut out 2 rectangles of fabric that are the same size and will make up the lining of the bag. Again, I'm using the same peachy tablecloth, but any medium to lightweight fabric will do. Now let's actually start making up this tote bag. Start by placing the checkered rectangles and lining pieces together with right sides together, and stitch them together, leaving the top edge unstitched like this. Once stitched, turn the checkered rectangles right side out and give it a good press. But leave the lining as it is, as that should be left inside out. Then fold and press the top edge of the checkered part in by about 1 centimeter or half an inch. And then press the top edge of the lining part out by the same amount. Then with wrong sides together, place the lining into the checkered part of the bag. Push the corners into one another and match the folded edges and side seams together. Pin the folded edges of the top of the bag together, and then take the straps that we made before and pin them in between the folded edges. And lastly, stitch the folded edges together, sandwiching the straps in place as you sew. And your amazing checkered tote bag is complete. This project definitely is not a quick one, but it was so much fun and is a great way to practice getting your stitching and seam allowance consistent. Next, let me show you how to make this adorable scalloped tote bag. For this project, you'll need just one type of fabric, and I'm using calico because I just love the look of a classic plain calico tote. Start by cutting 2 rectangles that measure approximately 58 centimeters or 22 3/4 inches by 49 centimeters or 19 1/4 inches. Next, take the free scalloped edge template that I've made just for this video, and also take a water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk, and with the 2 fabric rectangles on top of one another with right sides together, draw the scalloped edge directly onto the edges of the fabric. Mark out 6 scallops along the longer sides of the fabric, leaving a 4 centimeter or 1.5 inch space from the bottom edge, and then mark out 5 scallops along the bottom edge like this. So your fabric rectangles should now have the scalloped edge marked onto it like this. Next, pin the layers of fabric together and then stitch along the drawn out scalloped markings, placing your machine's needle into the fabric and lifting the presser foot to be able to turn the fabric at the sharper points of the scallop. Once stitched, trim away the excess fabric, cutting as close to the points as possible without accidentally snipping the stitches. And you should now have something that looks like this. Turn the tote bag right side out. And then use something like a knitting needle to push the scalloped curves out. Then give the scalloped edges a good press with your iron. Once pressed, stitch around the edges approximately 6 centimeters or 2 1/4 inches from the edge of the scallops like this. Then fold and press the top raw edge in by about 2 centimeters or 3/4 inch twice so that the top edge is flush with the first scallop. Then make 2 straps out of your fabric just like I showed for the first tote bag, and place the 2 ends of the straps into the folded pressed edge at the top of the bag. Then stitch the folded edge of the bag in place, sewing the back and front of the bag separately and sandwiching the straps in place as you sew. It's best to sew the folded edge down at the top and the bottom of the fold like this for extra strength. And your adorable scalloped tote bag is complete. It's so simple, but look how cute this tote bag is. It's definitely not your typical tote bag. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you've learnt some new fun techniques to try next time you're making some tote bags. If you do have a go at either of these 2 projects, then I would love to see them, so be sure to tag me at Rosery Apparel when you share your photos on Instagram. And make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already for more sewing type videos like this one. Thanks so much for watching until the very end, and I'll see you in the next video.